so much details about this episode of Keshav Kashmiri. We see in all other pastimes, he has described it in a very, very concise way. He's hardly just mentioned just one or two verses. But here we see in this pastime of Lord exhibiting his scholarly pastime, there is so much of detailing by Kaviraj Goswami, because Kaviraj Goswami wants to emphasize this fact that to what extent Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was a great scholar. Even the greatest scholar of that time was no match. This is to emphasize that bhakti is far superior than jnana. Many times, most of the people, those who are pursuing the path of jnana, they have this misconception that jnana is higher than bhakti. But that has been clearly refuted through this pastime of Keshav Kashmiri. And so much elaboration and detail is being given by Sri Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami. So let us begin. Jayo Jayo Sri Chaitanya, Jayo Nityananda, Jaya Dvaita Chandra, Jaya Gaur Bhakta Vrinda. Jayo Jayo Sri Chaitanya, Jayo Nityananda, Jaya Dvaita Chandra, Jaya Gaur Bhakta Vrinda. Jayo Jayo Sri Chaitanya, Jayo Nityananda, Jaya Dvaita Chandra, Jaya Gaur Bhakta Vrinda. So we will continue from the 61st verse, and there are further many details. So kindly be patient and kindly try to keep your attention intact to be able to receive this message which is being transmitted through Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami. So the 5 faults which were emphasized by Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, he is detailing, he is explaining. What are the faults in the combination, in the composition of Keshav Kashmiri? So this is the 60th verse which we did yesterday. To connect, I'll repeat the 60th verse. Because the word Vitya, second, is the unknown, and its combination in this compound word, the intended meaning of equality with Lakshmi is lost. Avimrishta vidheyamsha ei dosher naam aur ek doshe ache suna savadhan. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is saying, here, my dear Digvijay Pandit, hear with attention. Suna savadhan. Not only is there the fault of avimrishta vidheyamsha, but there is also another fault which I shall point out to you. Kindly hear me with great attention. Bhavani bhartur shabda dile paiya santosh virodha mati krita name mahadosh. There is another great fault. You have arranged the word Bhavani Bhartar to your great satisfaction, but this betrays the fault of contradiction. What is this contradiction? Mahaprabhu will explain. Bhavani Shabd kahe Mahadevera Grahini Tara Bharta Kahila Dvitiya Bharta Jani. So this is both Bengali and also Sanskrit. Bhavani Shabd. The word Bhavani means the wife of Lord Shiva. This world is called as Bhava. Why? Because this Bhava, this world, is controlled by Durga. Durga's name is also Bhavani. And she is the consort of Lord Shiva. But when we mention her husband, one might conclude that she has another husband, because he is using the word Bhavani and then he is using the word Bharata. Bharata means the husband, When he says Bhavani, it is implied that she is the wife of Lord Shiva. But when he uses the word Bhavani Varta, that implies Bhavani, who is the wife of. That means here Kaviraj Goswami is emphasizing the fault which was made by Keshav Kashmiri, that by mentioning twice Bhavani and also mentioning the word Bharta, he is giving this wrong meaning that Bhavani has some other husband. So the word Bhavani means the wife of Lord Shiva, but when we mention her husband, one might conclude that she has another husband. Shiva Patnir Bharta Iha Sunite Virod Virodhamati Krita Shabda Shastre Nahi Shuddha. It is contradictory to hear that Lord Shiva's wife has another husband. The use of such words in literature creates the fault called Virodhamati Krit. Brahmana Patnir Bhartar Haste Dehadan Shabda Sunite Hoya Dvitiya Bharta Gyan. If someone says, place this charity in the hand of the husband of the wife of the Brahmana. Got it? A little twister. Place this charity in the hand of the husband of the wife of the Brahmana. When we hear these contradictory words, we immediately understand that the Brahmana's wife has another husband. Don't scratch your head. If it does not enter, no problem. Just hear. Because Kaviraj Goswami has already blessed. Jeba nahi bujhe keba sunite sheha. So just we have to hear. Vibhavati Kritiyaya Vakya Sangha Puna Visheshana Adbhut Guna E Punar Ata Dusana. Adbhut Guna and Dushana. Dushana means the fault and Guna means the quality. This statement by the word Vibhavati flourishes is complete. Qualifying it with adjective Adbhut Guna, wonderful quality, creates the fault of redundancy. Redundancy, is repetition of already repeating what has already been expressed. So this is a fault of redundancy. Here Mahaprabhu is pointing out. Teen pade anuprashe dekhi anupama eke pade nahi dosha bhagna krama. There is extraordinary alliteration in 3 lines of the words. But in 1 line, there is no such alliteration. Alliteration, you understand, is the alankar, is the decoration of the words. This is the fault of deviation. So it has to be uniform. In each line, that alliteration or that alankar should be there. But it is there in the 3 lines of the verses, but in the 4th, it is not there. So it is a fault. Yadyapi ye shloka ache pancha alankara ye pancha doshe shloka kaila charakhar spoiled. Although there are 5 literary ornaments decorating this verse, the entire verse has been spoiled by these 5 most faulty presentations. Dasha alankara yadi eka shloka hoya eke doshe sabe alankara hoya shaya. If there are 10 literary ornaments in the verse, but even 1 faulty expressions, the entire verse is nullified. Sundara sharira yaichi bhushane bhushita eka shveta kushta yaiche karaye vigita. So Mahaprabhu gives a practical example. He says that one's beautiful body may be decorated with jewels, but 1 spot of white leprosy, Shweta Kushta, makes the entire body abominable. The great sage Bharat Muni, an authority on poetic metaphor, has given his opinion in this connection as follows. Rasa alankaravata kavyam doshayuka ched vibhushitam syad vapu sundaram api svitrena ekena durbhagam. As one's body, although well decorated with ornament, is made unfortunate by even one spot of white leprosy, so an entire poem is made useless by fault, despite alliteration, similes, and metaphors. Pancha alankar ebe sunaha vichar, dui shabda alankar, tine arthe alankar. Now here the description of the five literary embellishments. There are two ornaments of sound and three ornaments of meaning. Shabda alankar teen pade ache anuprasha Shri Lakshmi Shabde Punar Uktavada Bhasa. There is a sound ornament of alliteration in three lines. And in the combination of the word Shri and Lakshmi, there is the ornament of a tinge of redundancy. प्रथमचरणे पांच ताकरेना प्रांति तृतीय चरणे होए पांच रेफा स्थिति. In the arrangement of the first line, the letter ta occurs 5 times. And the arrangement of the third line repeats the letter ra 5 times. Chaturtha charane chari abha kare prakasha ateva shabda alankara nuprasha. But in the fourth line, the letter bha occurs 4 times. This arrangement of alliteration is a pleasing ornamental use of sound. Shri Shabde Lakshmi Shabde Eke Vastu Ukta Punarukta Praya Bhashe Nahi Punarukta. Although the word Shri and Lakshmi convey the same meaning and are therefore almost redundant, they are nevertheless not redundant. Shri Yukta Lakshmi Arthe Ravi Bhed Punarukta Vada Bhasa Shabda Alankar Bhed. Describing Lakshmi as possessed of Shri, opulence, offers a difference in meaning with a tinge of repetition. This is the second ornamental word use of words. Lakshmira eva artha alankara upama prakash aure arthe alankare ache naam virodhabhas. The use of words Lakshmi Riva manifests the ornaments of meaning called upma. There is also further ornament of meaning called virodhabhas or contradictory indication. Gangate kamal janme sabara subho kamale gangara janme atyanta virod. Everyone knows that the lotus flower grows in the water of the Ganges. But to say that the Ganges takes birth from the lotus flower seems extremely contradictory. यहाँ विष्णु पदे पद्मा गंगा राउत्पत्ति विरोधे अलंकार इह महत् चमत्कृति. The existence of Mother Ganges begins from the lotus feet of the Lord. Although this statement that water comes from the lotus flower is a contradiction, in connection with the Lord Vishnu, it is great wonder. Ishwar achintya Shakti Gangara Prakash Ihate Virodha Nahi Virodhabhas. In this birth of the Ganges by the inconceivable potency of the Lord, there is no contradiction, although it appears contradictory. Prabhupada gives a long purport. Should I read? I don't want to skip. It is a little bit of test of patience. कितना हम ध्यान से सुन रहे हैं. The central point of all Vaishnava philosophy is to accept the inconceivable potency of Lord Vishnu. What sometimes appears contradictory from a material viewpoint is understandable in connection with the Supreme Personality of Godhead, because he can perform contradictory activities by dint of his inconceivable potencies. Modern scientists are puzzled. For Lord, there is no limitation. Why? Because these powers are unlimited. They cannot even explain how such a large quantity of chemical has formed the atmosphere. Scientists explain that water is the combination of hydrogen and oxygen. But when asked where such a large quantity of hydrogen and oxygen came from, how they combined to manufacture the great oceans and seas, they cannot answer because they are atheists who will not accept that everything comes from life. Their thesis is that life comes from matter. Where do all these chemicals come from? The answer is that they are produced by the inconceivable energy of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Living entities are part of the Supreme Godhead, and from their bodies come many chemicals. For example, the lemon tree is a living entity that produces many lemons, and within each lemon is a great deal of citric acid. Therefore, if even an insignificant living entity who is but a part of the Supreme Lord can produce so much of chemical, how much potency there must be in the body of the Supreme Personality of Godhead? Scientists cannot perfectly explain where the chemicals of the world are manufactured. Scientists insist upon their most illogical and foolish theory that life comes from matter. Although this is quite impossible, they cannot prove in their laboratories that matter can produce life. Yet there are thousands and thousands of examples illustrating that matter comes from life. Therefore, in Sri Caitanya-caritāmṛta, Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami says that as soon as one accepts the inconceivable potency of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, no great philosopher or scientist can put forward any thesis to contradict the Lord's power. This is expressed in the following Sanskrit verse. Ambujam ambuni jatam kvachedapi na jatam ambujat ambu mura vidhi tad vipritan padambhojam mahanadi jata. Try to understand what is this. Everyone knows that the lotus flower grows in the water. Ambuja is the lotus flower and Ambuni is the water. So everyone knows that the lotus flower grows in the water, but water never grows from the lotus. Clear? All such contradictions, however, are wonderfully possible in Krishna. The great river Ganga has grown from his lotus feet. Gangaram mahatva sadhya sadhanatah Vishnu padotputti anupamalankar. The real glory of Mother Ganges is that she has grown from the lotus feet of Lord Vishnu. Such a hypothesis is another ornament called Anuman. Stulai panchadosha pancha alankar sukshma vicharaye yadi achaye apar. I have simply discussed the 5 gross faults and 5 literary embellishments of this verse. But if we consider it in fine detail, we will find unlimited faults. Pratibha kavitva tomar devata prasade avichar kave avasya pade dosha pade. You have achieved poetic imagination and ingenuity by the grace of your worshipable demigod. But poetry not well reviewed is certainly subject to criticism. Vicharika vitva kaila hoye sunirmal sa alankara haila artha kare jhalamal. Poetic skill used with due consideration is very pure. And with metaphor and analogies, it is dazzling. Suniya Prabhura Vakya Dige Vijay Vishmita Mukhe Nani Sare Vakya Pratibha Stambhita. So after hearing the explanation of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, the champion poet was struck with wonder. His cleverness stunned. He could not say anything. He had no reply. He was completely dumbfolded. Kahite chahe kichu nai se uttar tabe vichariya mane hoila fana fara. He wanted to say something, Keshav Kashmiri, but no reply would come from his mouth. He then began to consider this puzzle within his mind. Paduya balak kaila mora buddhi lo jani saraswati mora kariya che inko. So Keshav Kashmiri is thinking, he is not finding anything to be able to reply. This mere boy has blocked my intelligence. I can therefore understand that Mother Saraswati has become angry with me. So this is the conclusion he has reached. In the Bhagavad Gita, it is clearly said that all intelligence comes from the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who is situated in everyone's heart as Paramatma. The Paramatma gave the Pandita the intelligence to understand that because he was proud of his learning and wanted to defeat even the Supreme Lord, by the will of the Lord and through the agency of Mother Saraswati, he had been defeated. One should not therefore be too proud of one's position. Even if one is a greatly learned scholar, if he commits an offense to the lotus feet of the Lord, he will not be able to speak properly. In spite of his learning, in every respect, we are controlled. Our only duty, therefore, is to surrender always to the lotus feet of the Lord and not be falsely proud. Mother Saraswati created the situation to favor the champion Pandit so that he might surrender unto the Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. So we see how important we are reading Caitanya-caritāmṛta, which is considered to be the PhD. Srila Prabhupada said that Bhagavad Gita is the elementary book. It is like high school. And Srimad Bhagavatam is like graduation. But Caitanya-caritāmṛta is for those who are postgraduate students in Krishna consciousness. But if you see analytically, Prabhupada in almost every purport, he quotes the Bhagavad Gita verses. So Bhagavad Gita is the constant companion of everyone, whether he is neophyte, whether he is Madhyam Adhikari, or even if he is Uttam Adhikari. Ya vyakhya karila se manushera nahi shakti nimani mukhera hi baleya pani saraswati. So the conclusion which is reached by Keshav Kashmiri, he says, the wonderful explanations the boy has given could not have been possible for a human being. Therefore, Mother Saraswati must have spoken personally through his mouth. So far, Mother Saraswati was speaking through Keshav Kashmiri's mouth. Now he is having this view. Eta bhavi kahe suna nimai pandita tava vyakhya suniyami hoila vishmita. Thinking thus, the Pandit said, my dear Nimai Pandit, please hear me. Hearing your explanations, I am simply struck with wonder. So he has already conceded. Alankara nahi pada nahi shastra bhyas kemanoei sabe artha karila prakash. So Keshav Kashmiri tells Nimai Pandit, I am surprised. You are not a literary student and you do not have long experience in studying the Shastras. How have you been able to explain all these critical points? Yaha suni Mahaprabhu ati bada rangi tahara hriday jani keha kari bhangi. Hearing this and understanding the Pandit's heart, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu replied in a humorous way. Shastrera vichara bhala manda nahi jani Saraswati ye balaye se balivani. My dear sir, I do not know what is good composition and what is bad. But whatever I have spoken must be understood to have been spoken by Mother Saraswati. So having said that, Mahaprabhu made the Pandit become even more bewildered. Iha suni dig vijay karila nishchoye Shishu dvara devi mora kaila parajoye. So the Digvijay is thinking, that when he heard this judgment from Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, the Pandit sorrowfully wondered why Mother Saraswati wanted to defeat him through a small boy. अजितारे निवेदिबे करी जप ध्यान शिशु द्वारा कैला मोरा एता अपमान. So he is feeling vindicted. I shall offer prayers and meditation to the goddess of learning, that is Saraswati Devi. The champion concluded, and ask her why she had insulted me so greatly through this boy. वस्तुतः सरस्वती अशुद्ध श्लोक कराइला विचार समाय तारा बुद्धि अच्छाई दिला. Saraswati had in fact induced the champion to compose this verse in an impure way. Furthermore, when it was discussed, she covered his intelligence, and thus the Lord's intelligence was triumphed. कबे शिष्य गना सब हसी तेला गीला ता सबा निषेधी प्रभु कबीरा कहिला. When the poetic champion was thus defeated, all the Lord's disciples sitting there began to laugh loudly. But Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu asked them not to do so. He addressed the poet as follows. So when Keshav Kashmiri was completely brutalized, all his argument, all his composition was reduced to dust by Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. So Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's students, his Shishyagana, they all started to make fun and joke of Keshav Kashmiri. But Chaitanya Mahaprabhu forbade them. He addressed the poet as follows. Tumi bada pandit maha kavi shiromani yara mukhe bahiraya aiche kavyavani. You are the most learned scholar and topmost of all great poets. For otherwise, how could such fine poetry come from your mouth? Tomara kavitva yena ganga jaladhar tuma sama kavi kotha nahi dekhiya. So Mahaprabhu is flattering him. Mahaprabhu is praising him. He is saying your poetic skill is like the constant flow of the water of the Ganges. I find no one in this world who can compete with you. Bhavabhuti Jaya Deva or Kalidas Tasabara Kavitva Ache Doshera Prakash. Even in the poetic composition of such great poets as Bhavabhuti, Jayadev and Kalidas, there are so many examples of fault. Doshagana vicharya ei alpa kari mane kavitva karena shakti tahana vakhani. Such mistakes should be considered negligible. One should see only how such poets have displayed their poetic power. In Srimad Bhagavatam 1.5.11 it is said, Tadvag visargo janataga viplavo yasmin prati shlokam abadhavati api namani ananta striyasho ankitani shanvanti gayanti grahananti sadhava. Very beautiful verse. This is the verse which inspired Vyasadeva to compose the Srimad Bhagavatam. This word is spoken by Sri Narad Muni. Very beautiful meaning. In exploring the glories of the Lord, inexperienced men may compose poetry with many faults. But because it contains glorification of the Lord, such great personalities read it, hear it, and chant it. Shanvanti is to hear, Gayanti is to glorify, Grihinanti is to accept. And who does it? Not everyone. Sadhava. Those who are pure. Those who are actually sadhus. Despite its minute literary discrepancies, one must study poetry on the merit of its subject matter. According to Vaishnava philosophy, any literature that glorifies the Lord, whether properly written or not, is first class. Manish Prabhu?
Yes,
You're
Prabhuji.
hearing?
Yes, Prabhuji.
Okay. So on this basis, it was shared. But we should try to avoid that, because many times our mind is very much influenced by Kali. So it gets stuck whenever we see any fault. It does not appreciate the glory. One moment. Class ले रहा हूँ. Sorry. So if we are writing, so then there should not be any hesitation. We should not get into this trap कि मेरा सही से मेरे को लिखना नहीं आता, मेरा राइटिंग उतना अच्छा नहीं है, या मेरा कंपोजिशन उतना अच्छा नहीं है. It does not matter. तदवाग विसर्गो जनताग विप्लो. So if it is for the glorification of the Lord, the grammar or the other things, the embellishments does not matter. What matters is that we have the desire to glorify the Lord. This is what is the inspiration which Narad Muni gave to Vyasadeva. He said, you have compiled so much, you have given so many Shastras, but what is the use of all these Shastras? They are all useless, because you have not glorified the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the cause of all causes. And after hearing this verse and the instructions of Narad Muni, Srila Vyasadeva meditated. That is very beautifully explained in Srimad Bhagavatam. And in his meditation, he saw the Supreme Personality of Godhead. He also saw the Maya Shakti, and how the Maya Shakti is bewildering all the conditioned souls. So he was inspired to glorify the Supreme God. So Narad Muni is giving this principle. So never ever you should feel that I am not very good or very expert, so I will not write or I will not share. That is not applicable. But that does not mean that we don't improve or we don't learn. But we should not hesitate. So this principle is mentioned here. And you see how Chaitanya Prabhu is dealing with this Keshav Kashmiri and how he's transforming him. What Mahaprabhu is taking away from him is his pride. He had so much of pride of his expertise, of his knowledge. So Mahaprabhu has completely smashed him to dust by pointing out not just 5 faults, unlimited faults. And all his pride has been crushed. But what happens is, a person who is a leader, who is well known, he has very high falsehood. So when his position is taken away, he becomes inimical. But now Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is appreciating his effort in the composition. And then he's saying that the faults do not matter. See very nicely. So that will lead this Keshav Kashmiri to be transformed. This is the expertise of preaching. In explaining the glories of the Lord, inexperienced men may compose poetry with many faults. This is for us. We are all inexperienced. So whatever we will compose or whatever we will write or share, there will be many mistakes many times. But because it contains glorification of the Lord, great personalities read it, hear it, and chant it. They don't reject it because they are not guided or motivated by the fault. They are guided or motivated by the glorification. That is most important. Despite its minute literary discrepancies, one must study poetry on the merit of its subject matter. What is the subject matter? Glorification of the Lord. Namani anantasya yasho ankitaniya. It is the glorification of Anantasya, that is the Supreme Lord. According to Vaishnava philosophy, any literature that glorifies the Lord, whether properly written or not, is first class. There need be no other consideration. The poetic composition of Bhava Bhuti or Shrikanta, included in Malati Madhava, Uttar Charita, Veer Charita, and many similar Sanskrit dramas. The great poet was born during the time of Bhojaraj as the son of Nilakantha, a Brahmana, Kalidas, flourished during the time of Maharaj Vikramaditya, and he became the state poet. He composed some 30 or 40 Sanskrit dramas, including Kumar Sambhava, Abhigyan, Shakuntala, and Meghadatta. His drama Raghuvamsha is especially famous. We have already described Jaydev in chapter 13 of the Adi Leela. Shay Sheva Chapali Kichu Na Labhe Amar Shishyera Samana Mui Na Hoye Tumar. See how much Mahaprabhu is appreciating. He's saying, I am not even fit to be your disciple. Why? Because I am a young child. Therefore, kindly do not take seriously whatever childish impudence I have shown. So Mahaprabhu is, in a way, he is asking for overcoming what is the fault which has been expressed by him. Ajiva se yahan kali mili beaba suni be tumar mukhya shastrera vichar. Please go back home and tomorrow we may meet again, so that I may hear discourses on the Shastras from your mouth. Ei mata nije ghare gela dui jana kavi ratrir kaila saraswati aradhana. But you cannot give it up. If we are badly defeated or we are challenged and we are smashed, so we cannot forget it. In this way, both the poet and Chaitanya Mahaprabhu went back to their homes, and at night the poet worshipped Mother Saraswati. Saraswati sapne tare upadeshe kaila sakshat Ishwar kari Prabhu ke janila. So he was a worshipper of Mother Saraswati, and Saraswati was so much satisfied with Keshav Kashmiri that whenever Keshav Kashmiri spoke, she used to recite on his tongue. So whatever he spoke was undefeatable. So now he was completely bewildered, puzzled that how he could be defeated by a small boy. And he is worshipping, he is calling for Mother Saraswati to appear. In a dream, the goddess informed him of the Lord's position, and the poetic champion could understand that Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is the Supreme Personality of Godhead himself. Pratiyasi Prabhu Pade Loila Sharana Prabhu Kripa Kaile Tara Khandila Bandhana. So now he has transformed. He has completely changed. The next morning, the poet came to Lord Chaitanya and surrendered unto his lotus feet. The Lord bestowed his mercy upon him and cut off all his bondage of material attachment. This is the greatest blessing. The greatest blessing is to cut off the attachment to the material bondage. The same process advocated by Sri Krishna in his teachings in Bhagavad Gita, as it is, surrender unto me in all instances, was advocated by Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. The champion surrendered unto the Lord, and the Lord favored him. One who is favored by the Lord is freed from material bondage. What is the verse? One who is favored from the Lord is freed from material bondage. Which verse is this? We have studied this verse. Anyone? Which verse is this? One is favored as the Lord is freed from material bondage. It is from the 7th chapter. Kana, you remember 7th chapter? Forgot.
Prabhuji, right now my exams are going on, so I
Exams are there.
exams.
Do we remember the taste of Rasgulla? That is forgotten in exam. That we remember. That we will never forget. Yes, Dolamani Prabhu.
प्रभुजी देवी है श्री गुणमयी मम माया दुराताया
Mamevaya prapadyante
मायातम
maya metam taranti. Both you and Suman also raised her hand. So you see, if we have not understood Bhagavad Gita, there is no point in studying Srimad Bhagavatam or Caitanya-caritāmṛta. Because the principles of Bhagavad Gita are detailed and described in other Shastra. Okay. One who is favored by the Lord is freed from material bondage, as stated in the Bhagavad Gita. Tyaktva deham punarjanma neti mameti so Arjuna. That is also there in the 4th chapter. Bhagyavantam digvijay safala jivana vidya bale paila mahaprabhu racharana. The poetic champion was certainly most fortunate. His life was successful by the dint of his vast learning and erudite scholarship, and thus he attained the shelter of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. So all his pride was removed, and he came and submitted to Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, and his life became successful. Srila Narottam Das Thakur has sung that the best qualification for taking shelter of the lotus feet of Lord Chaitanya is to be the most fallen, because the Lord comes specifically to deliver the fallen soul. In this age, there are very few scholars. Almost everyone is fallen, meat eater, drunkard, woman hunter, or gambler. Such persons are never considered learned scholars, even if they pose as such, because these are so-called scholars superficially see that Chaitanya Mahaprabhu associate with the fallen soul. They think that he is meant for the lower class of men, but that they do not need him. Thus, such scholars do not take to the Krishna consciousness movement. To be puffed up with false learning, therefore, is a disqualification from accepting the Krishna consciousness movement. But here is a special example. For although the poetic champion was a great learned scholar, the Lord also favored him because of his humble submission. So this is one of the learning, the lesson, that Chaitanya Mahaprabhu removed all his pride and made him also to submit and surrender. And thus he received the favor of the Supreme Lord. Ei sabalila varni achena vrindavan das ye kichu vishesha iha karila prakash. Srila Vrindavan Das Thakur has described all these incidents elaborately. I have only presented the specific incident that he has not described. Chaitanya Gosai Lila Amrit Tera Dhar Sarva Indriya Tipta Hoye Shravane Yahar. This is a verse to memorize. Once again, I will repeat. Chaitanya Gosai Lila Amrit Tera Dhar Sarvendriya Tripta Hoya Shravane Yaha. The nectarian drops of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's pastime can satisfy the senses of everyone who hears them. Shri Rupa Raghunath Pade Yahara Ar Caitanya-caritāmṛta Kahe Krishna Das. Praying at the lotus feet of Srila Rupa and Sri Raghunath, always desiring their mercy, I Krishna Das narrate Sri Caitanya-caritāmṛta following in their footsteps. Hare Krishna. So thus ends the Bhakti Vedanta purport to Sri Caitanya-caritāmṛta, Adi Khand, 16th chapter, describing the pastime of the Lord in his childhood and youth. So now it will be the pastime of his youth, of his Yavan Lila. Should I start today or should I continue tomorrow? Bolo. Boliye. I'm quite exhausted today. I had a very intense day. If you allow, we will continue tomorrow. But try to deliberate how Mahaprabhu dealt with this Keshav Kashmiri. How Mahaprabhu transformed him. How he dealt with him. Although Mahaprabhu was very firm in his faults, but how Mahaprabhu dealt with him. This is amazing. Very amazing. Caitanya-caritāmṛta, the dealings are very, very amazing. Anyone has any question or anything to discuss so far? Completed this 16th chapter. Yes, Jonamani Prabhu.
Prabhuji, how our pride can be crossed?
Our pride can be crushed. What are we proud of? Pride means ignorance. Pride represents ignorance. And knowledge means humility. Vidya vinay sampanne. Vidya dadati vinayam. So pride is a reflection of false ego. And false ego means one is in ignorance. One does not know who he is. So Keshav Kashmiri, he was exhibiting so much of pride. But when Goddess Saraswati told him that I am also the servant of the Lord, the one who has defeated you is my Lord and Master. It is because of ignorance and pride that we do not take to the shelter of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. What is holding us? Is pride. What are we proud of? What are we proud of? Do we possess anything which no one in the world has equal to us or more than us? Do we have any such possession or skill? What are we proud of? How insignificant we are. And at times we are forced to admit that how helpless we are. So pride is the result of one's ignorance of his own identity. That is the reason that we cannot chant. Trinadapi suni chena tarorapi sahishnuna amanina manadena kirtaniye sadahari. How many faults do we commit? Can we say that whatever we do is always perfect, is always correct? So, what is the reason of having pride? On what basis? We're full of faults. And even if one is full of fault, if he exhibits pride, then what kind of person he is? So how to remove pride? That is very important. We should serve. We should take some humble service. I was hearing one message today in the yatra. Our brahmacharis are having parikrama. There's a big parikrama which is happening in Navadip, the official parikrama. So one of the leaders, he was giving message to two of the brahmacharis. He said, for next 1 week, you will clean the toilets. Why? Because they would have done something. Why toilet cleaning is given? It is a punishment to reduce our pride. Once one very known, very celebrity Vaishnava devotee was mentioning that whenever he goes in yatra, he takes big yatras. He says, when the devotee leaves, I wash vessels. I sit and wash vessels so that I don't get pride in my heart. I'm not affected by pride. You should do some menial services. Never think that now I have become, guide or guru. There are so many who are following us. It's trick of Maya. The practical example is to always continue doing some menial services. And pride means both ignorance and the impact of false ego. Hare Krishna.
Thank you, Prabhuji.
Okay, so shall I stop here? We'll resume tomorrow. Hare Krishna, Shri Caitanya-caritāmṛta ki jai. Shri Krishnadas Kaviraj